What about the international newspapers and what's making headlines around the world? Sally and I will take you through some of the stories, then we'll talk about them, of course. Let's start with The Guardian. It's revealing a European Commission plan for counter-terrorism agencies to collect and store plane passengers' personal data and to keep it for up to 5 years. The report says among the information collected will be bank card details, home telephone numbers, meal choices like halal.
The Wall Street Journal looks at the financial health of the world's biggest oil companies following the drop in crude prices. Fourth quarter earnings are due to come out for the big names in the oil business in the next few days.
Blue chip Wall Street stocks took a sharp dive on Tuesday, with American multinational companies feeling the heat of a strong dollar and weak global growth. This is in the Financial Times.
The Times has the inquiry into the death of Russian dissident and former spy Alexander Litvinenko. The court heard the Kremlin ordered his assassination to stop him from exposing Vladimir Putin's alleged links to organised crime.
The Wall Street Journal's Asia edition reports that to stop phone tapping, the Chinese government wants to develop safe phone chips for official smartphones, with fears chips from the United States, well, suppliers from there anyway, may aid foreign spies.
And the unemployment line may be getting longer, with some animals at the Russian state circus likely to lose their jobs. There's more about that in the Moscow Times, and that's an incredible photograph there. Acrobats. Amazing.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Amazing.
Moscow State Circus is fantastic. They tour all over the world, of course. Here with us is Rolake Akinkugbe, Head of Energy and Natural Resources for the Nigerian bank FBN. Good morning to you, Rolake.
Nice to see you, Rolake.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
OK, let's start with The Guardian. So the Commission is requesting 42 items of passengers' details, plane passengers, for people coming in and going out of Europe. Among the things that they want to keep, your choice of meal. And I'm thinking, you know, what have they got against vegetarians?
Well, I mean, it's a pretty serious story, and also because I think, you know, you're collecting data as far down as meal choices, which indicates a degree of profiling going into this. And I think it's a highly controversial piece of legislation, but one I think may have to strike some compromise between invasion of people's privacy and the need to really track and deal with terrorism across the European Union. But one of the interesting things is actually a lot of other countries have actually moved quite far ahead of what the EU is now trying to do. So there's a sense in which you get that perhaps they're trying to catch up with the Americans. But I think it belies a certain amount of weakness in the tracking system if you feel you have to be this reactionary. Yeah.
What does it mean for people's experience as they travel around? I mean, you two both have different experiences to me.
That's exactly what I was going to say. What's it like for you travelling around the world? Which passport do you use?
Well, I mean, it depends. Obviously, for the ease of travelling without needing a visa, I might use a British passport. If I'm travelling West Africa, I'll use my Nigeria passport. But the point is, regardless of what passport you use, there might be a degree of profiling around where you've originally started your journey. So if I started in Nigeria and ended up in France, regardless of traveling on a British passport, I might be profiled. Not in all cases, but around certain specific terrorist incidents, there was a heightened degree of surveillance for travelers from many parts of the world, including Africa. Yeah.
Now, for me, this many years after 9/11, I'm not any more profiled in the United States. Almost all my family live there. I'm always profiled at Heathrow. Now, they call when I'm at the check-in desk and they use a security code that they say security blah, blah, blah. This passenger is headed your way.
And you'd have thought after so many times the problem would have resolved, but
right.
It doesn't seem to have.
Absolutely.
Interesting times.
Right, let's have a look at the Wall Street Journal, and this is an ongoing story, and it'd be good to get your view on this, Rolake, being an energy expert. But big oil faces time of reckoning. So Wall Street Journal Wall Street Journal, should I say, looks at the big names in oil we all are very familiar with, BP, Shell, etc. But the companies and market section of the Financial Times highlights a Nigerian-based organisation that we're not so familiar with, Afren, who is going through very difficult times because of the oil price.
Yeah, and it's an interesting story of contrasts between big oil and what I call small oil. So you have the big majors like BP and Chevron, who are a lot more insulated from the current tumble in prices because they have an integrated structure across all parts of the value chain. But then you have an Africa-focused firm like Afren, which has significant Nigerian assets, which has seen its stock prices has tanked significantly, not just as a reflection of tumbling global prices, but recently there have been some internal management headwinds within the company, and the market seems to be penalizing the company. It's facing huge debt repayment obligations, which it probably can't meet at the moment. So I think for a lot of companies like Afra, the smaller companies, they might find it a lot more challenging in the current climate.
But even in it, I mean, as you say, the bigger companies, they can stomach it to a degree, but the article highlights, and we were talking about yesterday about BP freezing the pay of 80,000 workers. Yeah. They are having to take quite severe measures, aren't they? To sort of get through this patch of very low oil prices.
Very low oil prices, and BP is perhaps a unique case because of the Gulf of Mexico spill, which is still having implications for it in terms of penalties and fines several years after the incident.
Now let's move on. We are looking at the strong dollar next and the impact on blue chip companies. Apple's my top story today seems to be immune from the issues as far as the strong dollar is concerned. But just talk us through what some of the big names are facing right now.
Yeah, I mean, the strong dollar has been a bit of a double-edged sword for the American manufacturing sector. First of all, consumers, lower consumer prices, lower energy prices in America, good thing for manufacturing. But on the other hand, your exports become a lot more expensive. And with weakening growth and slowing growth in emerging markets like China and India, demand then becomes a problem. But then you have the cases like Apple who are doing very well because they've been able to build quite a unique story around their brand, and you're seeing demands for the iPhone in the last quarter of 2014 absolutely skyrocket. So it's a really challenging time, and I wonder also what the impact of the continued tapering on the bond buying program will have as interest rates start to rise gradually in the States again.
So moving away from finance stories, and in the Times, this inquest that is going on into the murder of Alexander Litvinenko, it's an incredible story of international intrigue, and it's been called an act of terrorism on British soil because of the polonium. Polonium could have killed so many people within the vicinity of that area of the hotel where the polonium was put, allegedly in Mr. Litvinenko's tea.
And very startling, strong allegations. And actually, when you look at the potential public risk, as you mentioned, I think that's something that's often missed in the discourse on this particular issue. You do realize that you wonder how could this have happened on the streets of London, and perhaps, where there are not suspicions that these alleged suspects implicated in his murder would have carried out such a thing. And given the trail, given the fact that for a strong chemical and dangerous chemical like polonium, you'd have needed to have purchased it from certain suppliers, etc. But I think it's also going to exacerbate some of the recent diplomatic tensions between Britain and Russia.
If this inquest proves, as they're alleging, that the trail goes right to Vladimir Putin's door, imagine, I just can't, actually.
The fallout would be quite tremendous, and I think we will start to see some serious penalties, implications for the Russians, certainly from a British point of view. That might affect the business element and the trade element as well. Russia itself is already facing serious economic headwinds from the tumbling oil price. So very difficult territory, I think, this case potentially enters, yeah.
Now, again, Wall Street Journal, China looks to prop up chip makers. This is actually quite an interesting story about China's steps to protect individuals from snooping.
Yeah, it's interesting also because China, first of all, caught onto this in the aftermath of the, WikiLeaks scandal with Edward Snowden. And the government actually has been pumping billions of dollars into the semiconductor space, which is where these chips from the area in which these chips are manufactured. But I think the other interesting thing here is about how Chinese manufacturers are also moving from just making the phone hardware and actually reducing their dependence on the imports of semiconductors. And I think there's an economic story there as well.
An economic story,
but I think it also shows a degree of paranoia on the part of many governments around the world around surveillance and counter-surveillance and spying by countries on one another.
I remember the headlines not so long ago about Angela Merkel's phone being tapped by the American government and all that kind of thing. There was a list of people, in fact. So in some ways, it's no big surprise.
Well, that's right. In the Moscow Times, a story that we're not actually talking about is the US allegedly busting a Russian spy ring in the United States. But the story that we're talking about in the Moscow Times is about the Moscow State Circus having to cut costs and potentially getting rid of animals and performers. Apparently, they've got 49 crocodiles and they never really perform anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's feeling the pinch. And I wonder how much it costs to get a crocodile for a circus performance, but clearly it's trickling down all the way to every living thing. Yeah.
Have you been? Anybody been to the Moscow State Circus?
I haven't.
But I must admit, this photograph is incredible.
I think I have been, although, you know, obviously not product endorsement. You can't get better than Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil is something altogether different.
Yeah,
it's theatre
I've seen
as
them
well
once.
as circus.
Absolutely
Is it not
brilliant.
amazing?
Yeah.
Did they have 49 crocodiles, though?
No, they don't.
No, I didn't see any animals in the one I saw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The point is that
That's
you know,
the
this
point,
is
though.
one of the very, very few that still uses animals. I saw the Chinese State Circus about a year ago. No animals anywhere.
You're
but
obviously a bit of a circus
I
fan,
love
aren't you?
circuses. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
That's your
absolutely.
thing?
Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. Earpiece is coming out. Rolake, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Enjoy the rest of your week. We're going to have plenty more news and business coming up in about 5 minutes' time. For the moment, thanks for your company.
And if you're joining us in the UK, you can join the breakfast team. We'll see you soon.